on my iPhone camera since TikTok wants to delete my videos. But so I wrote a book called My Heart Belongs to God, Give Up the Search. And one thing about narcissistic emotional abuse and manipulation, it's really hard to heal from. So when you get out of a toxic relationship, you're grieving the person, you're grieving the relationship that you thought you had, the person that you thought you knew. And after some time you realize, okay, I don't deserve this, I deserve so much better. But instead of giving my heart to God and allowing God to bandage up the wounds, I was like, okay, like I'm gonna find someone else. My aunt was like, go find someone else. I was like, okay, like I'm gonna find the man who deserves me. But that's the thing, you're not supposed to do that, because it says he who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. So because I was going out trying to find a husband, I got my heart broken multiple times. I got SA'd. And so it led me back to Christ and actually waiting. And it's not easy. Like even when you get your heart broken, it's not easy, because the desire is still there. It's still there for a reason. But you have to give your desires to God, because the devil, like it says, roams around like a roaring lion seeking who he may devour. And you're so vulnerable when you decide to fully surrender your life to Christ, and you give up your desires and you give them to God. You give up your desires and you give them to God, and you allow him to work in your life. And when you go through spiritual warfare, all of these emotions end up coming up. And I mentioned in my other video that I usually give up at that time when the sexual desires kick in, and I suddenly have dreams about masturbation and like extras. Like I start to give up, because I'm like, well, why is my desires not being met? I can't do this. I'm not strong enough to go through this trial. I don't want to sit with these emotions. And the thing is, we're not supposed to be strong enough. Christ is strong enough. Okay, if we were supposed to bear everything, then we would have died on the cross. Jesus died on the cross for us. So I wrote this book to help so many young women not end up in these situations, these relationships, because my sexual journey had started at a very young age. Like when I was 5 years old, I was engaging in homosexuality. Because like I remember as a young girl, like walking into the bathroom and seeing, like, hearing two girls having sex in the bathroom, and I just was like, I felt pulled to join in. And so at that point, at that time, I didn't even know what porn was. I wasn't exposed to sex, like, so it was like in that specific moment. And so after that, like, I didn't have the identity of being bisexual until I was 12 years old, and I started to have sexual experiences with girls, and I realized that I felt safer. Like I realized, like, I wanted to explore my sexuality being with women versus being with when I was 12. I wanted to explore my sexuality being with girls versus being with a boy, because in my mind it meant like, okay, I lost my virginity, I'm a whore, you know, I'm disgusting. So for a long time I would have sex with girls, and like just fantasize like sleeping with girls. And this was so hard, because even as an adult, that desire was not broken until like I was like I struggled with homosexuality until I was 22 years old. And like even when I was with my ex-boyfriend at the time, like it was like I would fantasize about women, like women body parts, like, you know, the butt and the boobs. But I still, because I had lost my virginity at 15 years old, I knew what it felt like to have sex with a guy. So I preferred to have sex with a guy than to be with a girl. It was just that I still was sexually attracted to women. And I was like, well, because women won't hurt me. And that's the thing. Like I feel like for me personally, like that's what drew me to be in a relationship girls, because I felt more seen, I felt more valued having sex with women versus having sex with a man. Everybody else feels like that. If they feel more valued, feel more seen, feel more safe having sex with women versus having sex with men. I felt like that for a very long time, and that is a false idea. The Bible condemns it. As in the Bible, if a man lies down, a man cannot lie down with another man as he lies down with a woman, and vice versa. A lot, because like You know what? It's not because I'm embarrassed about it. It's because after I lost my virginity, like, yeah, I still struggled with like homosexuality, but it wasn't like, oh yeah, I was having sex with women. Then I started, engaging in sex with my boyfriend at the time, and like, and I got into another relationship. So like, you forget that you. It's not that I don't forget, but it's like, okay, like when you come out of one phase of your life, you're like, okay, this is what I deal with. This is what I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with sexual sin, giving myself to guys that don't value me. That's not my husband. So I wrote this book, okay, because I realized that I don't like to wait. I'm a terrible waiter, and on top of that, I like things being in my control. Like, I like to scope out the scene, right?
I'm gonna start it off slow. I'm gonna scope the scenery out. Watch out.
The thing is, it's much harder because I never waited. The days, the times where, like, when I first of all, I realized I wanted to be a wife at 18 years old, but it was more sexually, and I didn't realize, like, when you're a wife and you're in a marriage or in a union, right? It says that two shall become one. So you operate under one flesh. You're not two separate people, right? This is a one union. You're supposed to be bringing souls to Christ. Your marriage is a ministry. Your marriage is a testimony. It does not have everything. Everything does not make sense. And so because of that, it was really hard for me to surrender my desires to God, because I'm like, you're not seeing that I'm struggling with sexual sin. It's like, well, if God were to give you a husband, you're not going to understand what marriage is. And so many people rush into marriage because of sex, and then that's why they get a divorce. And they don't realize they're unequally yoked because they have two different purposes. And I was like, my marriage will be a testimony. It's not, no divorce is going to happen. But if you allow yourself, if you allow these desires, which God created sex, it's a good desire. It's not a bad desire, right? But it's like, it's in the confounds of marriage. You're supposed to be married, and you're not supposed to meditate on those thoughts because it's sin, right? It says in the Bible, if a man looks at a woman with lust, he already committed adultery in his heart. So we have to reevaluate and re-examine the way that we view sex and people, like being attracted to someone. There's nothing wrong with that, but it shouldn't go beyond where you're fantasizing. And then, like, when you're in a relationship, you have to avoid temptation, because it says to flee from sexual immorality, not try to fight it. And we always, like, I find myself trying to fight it, or like I'll just like if I have a dream about masturbation or having sex outside of marriage, and it's a dream, like, the enemy knows your weak points, right? And he knows your desires, so he'll send these dreams, and he knows that you're getting closer to God and you're not trying to give up. He will send the desires to tip you off, because once you engage in the sexual sin, yes, there's forgiveness, but it separates you from God, because sin separates you from God. So then now you're feeling shameful. Like, actually a couple days ago, I was like, oh my gosh, like, you're a whore, you're a slut, you had sex outside of marriage too many times, even though that is not what God has called you. It's from the enemy, but that's how I truly felt, because I was dealing with all these emotions and social media, because especially with BPD, like, you fantasize, like, not fantasize about heartache and depression and sadness and suicidal ideation, and that is from the enemy to keep you stuck. And I feel like I'm always stuck with my emotions, because I always act on my emotions, and then I'll feed into it more by listening to music. I literally wrote this on the 16th, and it says, I feel stuck. I was so happy to visit Korea, but now I feel depressed. All of the hurt from the past is haunting me. I am operating through pain while trying to be happy. I feel used by men, and I know it's my fault. I feel like men only want me for sex, and I feel embarrassed. I don't feel strong enough. My whole life, I felt like I was always sexualized. How, like, I never, like, really stayed in the church when it came to young adults, because I felt like I wasn't Christian enough. Like, I wasn't allowing God to transform me. I wasn't allowing God to transform me in the way that I needed to be transformed. And I didn't know had a healthy conversation without cursing and bringing up like all these worldly topics. And because during that time the situation changed, and I was like, okay, like I'm hurt, but I know I want marriage, and I was 18 at the time, and it was crazy because every time it was a cycle. Every time I would get into a relationship, we would break up, then I would go back to God, and then I would try to hang on to God for as much as I can, and then the spiritual warfare would happen, and then I would give up because it was too much, because I was being attacked in these areas. I was being attacked by lust, and I was being attacked by ex, and wanting to get back together with them, and then depression and suicide ideation. So I was being attacked by three things: lust, my ex, like having vivid dreams of my ex, and then suicide and depression. I meditate on it. I don't give it to the Lord. I don't ask myself, is this something that God is saying? Because when God speaks to you, when God puts thoughts in your mind, when He speaks to you, it's peaceful. It's not condemning. So me calling myself a whore, and it's like, I am not none of those things. It's just that I had a horrible way of navigating through relationships. If you don't go through the spiritual warfare, if you don't go through the battles, you will not receive those years that you lost, because you're not waiting. The whole season of isolation and waiting is meant to prepare you. It's not meant, and yes, okay, like when people talk about breaking, and I feel like I'm being broken, but yeah, sometimes you have to be broken in order to be put back together, okay? Because if you were whole, you wouldn't be going through that season. If you were perfect, you wouldn't be going through that season, because it's not something that you can learn on your own, and you're not and it doesn't we focus so much on the waiting season, and oh, how long is this gonna take? Like, do not rush the waiting season, because when you rush it, you end up back in the same cycles, because you think that you're healed and you're not. You think that you learned your lessons and you're not. You didn't, and then you end up back in the same cycle. Like, I remember when I went to Istanbul, and I thought, okay, I'm ready for, like, I was still going through spiritual warfare. I was still in a season of isolation, and I didn't let the Lord work in me, and I kept having these vivid dreams about my ex, and I was like, you know what? Like he said, go find someone else. I deserve to be married. I deserve a man that actually loves me. And I get on the dating app, and I started looking for a relationship. And so, like, I was being attacked, and I knew I was going through spiritual warfare. I was having really bad spiritual warfare. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. And I will be making more videos about my walk with God, and just showing this amazing journey of being a child of God and going back to Christ. And I can't wait to build a relationship with my followers. So let me know if you're a Christian. I really am looking for a Christian community and building my own Christian community. So if there's some brothers or sisters in Christ that you're interested to know about having a relationship with Jesus, how to have a relationship with Jesus, I will share my own personal testimony. And yeah, have a blessed day.